Hello, good afternoon. I wasn't expecting to be making a video today and I don't feel very tidy or dressed appropriately. I've just come back from walking my dogs, and when I came home I had a parcel from Canada with my silks for Anne Morrison, and here they are. They are beautiful. I had forgotten quite how beautiful these colours are. Now, I've had to drop the blinds in this room because the low winter sun was pouring through. But I still think, even with the blinds drawn, you can see just how beautiful these colours are. And it's this run of colours that excites me. The red and the raspberry and this beautiful pink and the pale pink. When you put that blue with them, it makes them mouth-watering. I absolutely adore them. And my fingers, they are itching to start stitching. They really are. But I'm going to be good. I'm going to wait to the official start date of the stitch along. But the day the stitch along starts, I'm not actually going to be home. I have to make a journey away from home, which has been delayed because of our lockdown, but our lockdown is lifted next week, so I'm going to do something that's needlework related that I don't want to talk about just yet, but if it all comes together and comes off, it's going to be something very, very exciting, not only for hats, but for all of you as well. Anyway, I'm going the wrong way here. Let's get back to Anne Morrison. So I wanted to prep my project so that I have it ready to take with me, and then I will be able to stitch on the start date in the car and in the hotel where we're staying. So the first thing I wanted to do was to make sure that this piece of linen, which is an offcut from a model that was stitched a couple of months ago, will actually fit Anne. Now, I didn't want to start anything with Anne until the majority of people had their supplies, so I was only presuming by eye that this linen was the right size. But of course, you've got to check it properly. So what I did, I popped a hoop on, and I got some silk and I basted out a line of stitches going under 2 over 2 under 2 over 2. So each stitch represents 2 threads, and I then turned a right angle and I did it the other way, and then I took a ruler. And the ruler is a hard, commercially produced ruler. It's not a ruler that's printed onto cardboard. It's not a soft plastic measuring tape because they stretch and distort. It's a rigid, hard ruler. So I can trust that the measurements are really accurate. And then I measured 1 inch and popped a pin in there, and the same this way. And then I counted them, and it turned out that this one was 48 threads and this way was 50 threads. So I then took a pencil and I just marked it on the selvage with an arrow, because the danger is you take your hoop off, you take your pins out, you pull your thread out and you think which was which. But if I've marked it on the selvage edge, it's there for me to know. So I know that my piece of jersey cream is 48 by 50. So I now needed to check that this is the right size for the project. So I went on to the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website, and I went into Sewing Baskets and Tools, and I went into our fabric calculator. So I popped in for the design size, the width, which is 164 stitches, and the height of the project is 238. So on the horizontal thread count, I popped in 50, and on the vertical thread count, I popped in 48. I put in 3 inches for a border, and I put no inches in for finishing because 3 inches is enough for a border and finishing. There's no point putting 2 separate measurements in. Keep this as simple as possible. So with 50 on the vertical and 48 on the, 50 on the horizontal and 48 on the vertical. That gave me a fabric size of 12.56 by 15.92. And normally on an oblong shape, I would be looking for the highest count to be on the horizontal, because the more stitches you fit into the inch, the less fabric you take. And because this is an oblong in this orientation, I wanted to keep it in and longer. But this piece of fabric was just a tad short. So I thought, okay, what will it be the other way round? So if I put 48 in on the horizontal and 50 on the vertical, it came out as 12.83 by 15.52. Not a lot of difference, but that difference means that I can use this piece of linen, and I will have plenty of linen, rather than using it that way where I would have had to have very narrow margins at the top and the bottom, and I will be stitching this on a millennium frame, so I need a good allowance to set this linen up on my frame. Now, if you're unsure of how that's going to look, because sometimes it's very hard to visualize something, I drew out the size with 50 count on the vertical, and I drew out the size with 50 count on the horizontal. And because this is only a small project and it is only 2 threads difference per inch, it doesn't really impact on the size that much. You can just see that is the difference the one way, and that's the difference the other way. It's marginal. So, although I would normally put the 50 on the horizontal, I'm going to be putting it on the vertical, purely so I can use my linen this way rather than that way, which would have meant it was tricky. I would have had to have very narrow top and bottom margins. So that's my linen prepped. I always like to read through the graph. Anne is a fairly straightforward stitch, but you never know what a project's going to be, and it's nice, it's a good idea to sit down, look at the graph, stitch it out in your mind. Is there anything that you have to be careful about? Check your borders. It's just well worth reading through, making sure there's nothing that you want to highlight. I like to stitch from my phone or my iPad, so I actually have this as a PDF version because I was the designer, but if I was stitching somebody else's, I would just take a photograph of the page, have it on my iPad and stitch from it. If I wanted to annotate my chart, I would take a photocopy, I would make a working copy, and I would scribble on there in case there was anything that I needed to note. The first thing that I would note when stitching Anne, I would check that these are all level and the same, so that I know that all of these are the same number of stitches all the way through. Sometimes little girls go off count. I would do the same with this. I would check that all of these are the same number of stitches. If she put an extra stitch in or put one stitch less in, I would mark it so I know that when I came to it that I would make the necessary adjustment. Little girls do odd little things. I've seen little dividing rows like this in sets of 2 where it might go to 1, or it might have an odd one of 3 stitches in. You just don't know with these little girls. When they were busy chatting to their friends, they could go wrong in class. Anyway, that is really all the preparation that I need to do for Anne Morrison. and I will be able to start stitching her on the start date of the stitch along, and I'm very much looking forward to having one of these that I can hang in my own home forever after at the end of 2021. She is such a pretty sampler, and Janice tells me that due to the hard work of Access Commodities, they actually have a few spare kits of silk. So if you haven't joined in for the stitch along, you are welcome to join us. There's over 1,100 stitches, in fact I think it's close to 1,200 stitches now participating in this stitch along. So come and stitch with us if you're not already doing so. I'll post a progress photograph of my start and on the end of the day. I don't know if I'll be able to get all of this done in one day. If I was home I would be able to, but when you're travelling and you're meant to be navigating you know, sometimes you can't concentrate quite as much as if you were at home in peace and quiet. Anyway, thank you for listening to me. If you need any help with Anne, you can ask me or you can ask other members of the Stitch Along. So until next weekend, when we would normally have a video from me, take care. Bye-bye.